Hi everybody, it's Casey from Upcycled Island, and today I'm going to show you how I use a man's shirt to make a top completely different from what the man's shirt looks like. So basically I'm turning the men's shirt, anyway, I'm going to turn it into fabric. So I can just cut my pattern out like I would cut out on fabric. Let me show you 3 tops that I made. I used the same pattern for all of them, and I used a man's shirt. And I was very lucky at a yard sale to find 3 shirts that I just loved the prints. A Hawaiian print, couple of Hawaiian prints, and a patchwork. And so I made the same pattern, and I did some different things to each one. On the first one, the patchwork one, I used the men's placket on the front of the shirt, and it's just for decoration. I sewed it shut. And then my other one is a Hawaiian print, and it has a seam down the front, and then no seam in the back. And then the third one, another Hawaiian print, it has no seam in the front, no placket, no seam, and it has a seam in the back. So I'm going to show you how to do each of those things using the men's shirt as fabric. And don't forget, be sure to like and share this video. And subscribe. Hit the subscribe button below this video, and next to that is a bell. Also select that bell and you'll be notified whenever I make a new video and post it on YouTube. Visit my Etsy shop, which is upcycledisland.etsy.com. Okay, this is the pattern that I used. It is New Look 6543, and it's a basic top with different necklines and either short sleeves or sleeveless. I'm using the scoop neck and sleeveless. The shirt I'm using is a men's 2XLT. And what I did was I cut it apart. I cut the sleeves off, and then I cut it apart at the side seams. So the front of it would lay flat, and the back of it will lay flat. So for the shirt that I wanted to keep the placket, I button all the buttons. I pin it in between the buttons so there'd be no gaping. And then I have my pattern piece, and you can see it's got 2 lines. The original pattern piece, this line here, is the fold line, and this is to be cut on the fold. And then I've added a seam allowance, because if I'm going to put a seam in the front of the pattern, that's the seam allowance for that. But I'm going to use the fold line, and I'm going to place it on the buttons. This is the fold line, the second line here, and I'm placing the pattern on it so that the fold line falls on the middle of the buttons, because the button is the center of the front, and so I'll place my pattern so that the fold line, the buttons fall on that fold line. Pin my pattern down, cut it out. Then I'll flip it over here and do the same thing. Flip my pattern over, place the fold line on the buttons, paying attention to where the button, the first button falls. I want seam allowance, so I'll measure how I cut out the other one, so this one will match. the fold line, the buttons are on the fold line, pin it down, cut it out. If you want the buttons to work, you want to be able to button your blouse, then you leave that unsewn. If you want that just to be for decoration, then I sew along this edge and then flip it over and sew along this edge. Press your shirt first before you do this. I didn't do that, but you should press your shirt before you start cutting out. What if I want my shirt to button up like a lady's shirt? A men's shirt is left over right, and a woman's shirt is right over left. If you want to use your button placket to button and unbutton your shirt, when you cut it out upside down. So you would place the fold, place your pattern upside down, just got enough room, place the fold line so the buttons are in the middle of the fold line, pin it, cut it out, do the same thing on the other side, flip it over, pay attention to where that first button is, take your little measuring tape and measure how far down that button is so they'll match. Place your buttons on your fold line, pin it, cut it out. That way when you button your shirt, it will button like a lady's shirt instead of a man's shirt. Now that is to get the effect that I got for this shirt that has the button placket down the front. Now for the shirt that has the seam down the front, right here, what I did was I just moved the pattern over, pinned it down, and then I cut along this seam allowance that I made, and then cut out the rest of the pattern. And do the same thing, flipped it over, and do the same thing on this side. Just move it over away from the button placket, pin it down, cut it out. To get the front with no seam, no placket, I cut the bottom of the shirt off at the yoke. Where's the men's? Here's the men's shirt. Here's the yoke. And this was attached to the yoke. I cut that off because it has a pleat and I need it to lay flat. So here is the back of the shirt. I simply fold it in half. And of course, like I said before, press your shirt before you do this. So here's your shirt. There's the fold. You're going to cut your pattern on the fold. This is the fold. This is the fold line. Cut out your pattern just like you would on regular fabric. And I wanted to remind you that if you want to get one of these shirts that says Upcycle, because once is not enough, you can get that in any number of colors and in several different styles. And you can get that at upcycled-island.creator-spring.com. And here it is. If you're a visual like me and you have to see it, there's the link to find the shirt. I love this shirt. I have it in several colors because upcycling, it's just what I do. It's who I am. So if you like to upcycle and want to tell the world, you can order the shirt at that address. Here's the back pattern, and it is normally goes on the fold. And just like the front of the pattern, see, there's the fold line. If I want a seam in the back, I added seam allowance. So this is in case we have a seam in the back, there's your seam allowance. So on the two shirts that will use the men's front to make the ladies' front, we're using the back of the man's shirt to make the back of the ladies' shirt, the ladies' top. So we simply take that back of the shirt that we cut off, fold it in half, place our pattern so that the fold line of the pattern is on the fold line of the fabric from the back of the shirt, pin it and cut it out. Simple, simple. On the shirt that has no front seam, we have to use, because we use the back of the men's shirt. So on this one, we have to use the front of the men's shirt to make the back of the lady's top. Are you confused enough? So I know you know what I'm talking about. So on that one, we simply take the front of the shirt, we place the pattern away from the placket, and we can fold it over so we have both fronts back to back. Place the pattern on there away from the placket, pin it down and cut it out. Very simple. The next thing we do is we have facings. And we have lots of fabric to use to make these facings. We have the sleeves. We have a front and back armhole facing and a front and back neck facing. And we have two sleeves, and we cut those sleeves apart at the underarm seam. And so we put those sleeves together. And remember to place them either pretty sides together or wrong sides together. Don't have them facing in the same direction. It'll make a big difference. And so we have these to use to cut out facings. If those aren't enough, we also have our back yoke, which is fabric, 2 layers of fabric. We have that fabric. And then we have all of the extra fabric that we didn't use when we cut out the patterns. There's quite a bit of fabric at the top that we have left over. So you'll have plenty of fabric to cut out your facings. Or if for some reason you don't have enough fabric to cut out those facings, you can use a complementary colored fabric. Say, for this is a black and white stripe. I could use a black fabric. I might have a black shirt and I use it to cut out my facings. Or you might want to use bias binding instead of facings. So you have lots of options. Well, I hope that was helpful to you and that I didn't confuse you too much with the back and the front and the back and the front. Depending on how you cut out the front is what you use to cut out the back. I've got some other videos planned, how to use a skirt to cut out patterns, just some helpful hints. Even if you're used to sewing and you're used to using fabric, sometimes it can be challenging to use pieces of clothing as your fabric, because you have to really finagle sometime to have enough fabric to cut out all your pieces. So I just wanted to give you some helpful hints to make that easier for you. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time. Stay safe.